Hey guys, welcome back to another exoticcarhacks.com video. My name is Pejman Kademi, host and founder of Exotic Car Hacks. And today we are going to cover some of the myths and realities of owning an exotic car so that you can understand a little bit more about what really happens behind the scenes when you own an exotic car. Having owned God knows how many cars in the past 5-10 years, like just always having driven, and I've driven exotics since I was like 22 years old. My first car was a 911 Turbo, and since then I've never owned anything that's not exotic, which is really weird. Somehow I've found that you can make more money with exotics and that you can also lose less money with exotics than normal cars. It may not make sense at first, but hopefully after this video it will. Here are some of the basic myths that most people kind of have about exotic cars. You can only buy them cash. No, that's not true at all. You can actually finance most exotic cars. Most banks will finance up to $300,000, which means that most cars, up to even Aventadors, can be financed 100% in cash. So that's pretty crazy, right? Like most people don't know that. So most people who own exotic cars are not millionaires, just so you know that. Some are. I mean, I would say like, probably like more than 30% are, but you don't have to be a millionaire to own an exotic car. You can buy a Maserati for even 20 grand if you understand some of the exotic car hack tricks. So that's the first myth. The second myth that I hear a lot is the insurance is really expensive. Like, my God, it's like so expensive, it's going to cost more than the car payment. Also false. In many cases, and this is probably in almost every case of my past cars, not a single car that I have owned, like an exotic like Lamborghini, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Maserati, or any of this crap, was more expensive than my BMW M6. My BMW was almost twice as much as my first Lamborghini, and my Bentley super rare $310,000 Bentley Super Sport convertible was about $200 every 6 months cheaper than my BMW M6, and that was the second most expensive car I've ever insured. Most Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and everything are really cheap to insure, and the reason why is because insurances choose to insure cars based on how likelihood of accidents, meaning like the amount of cars crashed each year in that make, model, and brand. And then they also look at the safety rating for that car. They look at the mileage on average driven for that car in a year. And so when they put two and two together, there's very few exotics that crash. While you may see them on TV because they are highlighted the minute they crash, there's just a lot more of the other crap that crashes. And so insurance companies know that they're driven less, they're done right. So if you have a good driving record, if you have a history of driving sports cars, for example, your insurance is typically not that much. Most Lamborghinis cost me $700-800 for 6 months. Most Ferraris cost me like $850. My Porsche cost me like $780 every 6 months, and it's the latest 911 Turbo S convertible. So there's a lot of cars out there, and there's a lot of myths about insurance. Don't believe them. The best insurance companies, we share them at exoticcarhacks.com for you. So make sure you check that out so you don't get raped, and at least you're covered if, God forbid, something happens. That which is important too. Good coverage is key. Another myth is, well, you got to cover maintenance and you got to cover repairs, which are very expensive. Also bullshit. Actually, here's the funny thing. I've had more repairs and more cost on my wife's base model E350 Coupe Mercedes than any car, than the past 5 exotics I've had combined. I'll tell you why. This is the other interesting part. So there's a very tight community of exotic car owners. And it is true that if you do go to the dealership, which I call the stealership, and require service on your Lamborghini, they're going to charge you $1,900 or some bullshit. And it's true that in most cases, if you follow scheduled maintenance, if you follow the dealership's recommendations, you're going to pay a lot of money for maintenance over the course of 2-3 years when owning your car. But that's not how you have to operate. At exoticcarhacks.com, we teach you, we show you, and we tell you where you can go with the right independent mechanics that are also insured. They work on Lamborghinis all day and Ferraris all day. And you can do oil changes as little as $199. And you can do annual service for $500. And most repairs are actually cheaper than normal cars like Mercedes and everything else. Why? Because most people don't buy they buy their Mercedes parts from the dealership. and the dealership typically charges a lot. With most exotics, it's a very tight-knit community, like I was saying, and you can find most parts on eBay, online, or through specialty manufacturers who can provide the parts at much cheaper rates. Plus, remember that most exotics have interchangeable parts, meaning the car behind me right here is a 2011 LP570 Performante, the peak of the peak, creme de la creme of Gallardos. Yet, most of its components, outside of some trim level stuff that's carbon fiber, etc., is actually no different than a 2009 LP560, which plenty of people have crashed in their existence, which means there's plenty of parts on the market for them. And there's plenty of used parts, new parts, cheap parts, aftermarket parts, just not that many on a base model BMW, because nobody cares to make aftermarket parts for it. So everything that's there is just usually dealership, which he ends up losing more. A good example of this, like a very brief example, my wife's E-Class E350 Coupe had a little knob, the little iDrive knob went bad, and the dealership cost was like $600. And then to install it and calibrate it was $300. To give you the same example for this Lamborghini behind me, I need to put a factory head unit in it, like the navigation head unit, and I can find one on eBay for $200. So an entire navigation unit with a screen, with the radio, with the CD player, or a little knob. $200? $1,000. And you can just plug in this one, the other one you got to calibrate through all this bullshit. So that tells you that, again, it's not that much more expensive. Now you have to do your homework to make sure you're buying the right car, because if you do have a catastrophic failure, which I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had because I've done my homework, like I teach you at exoticcarhacks.com, then you just will not have, you don't have to have catastrophic failures. Like I've never had one. You have little failures, small stuff happens, but it's not that bad if you know the right shops. And we teach you all that. So that's a myth too. It doesn't cost that much to maintain a car. Most exotics that I've owned for 6 to 12 months because I get bored a lot, I barely even do an oil change on it. And by the time I'm bored of it, I haven't done anything. On my Bentley, oh, Bentleys break, they're the worst, they're this, they're that. That's all myths. Bentleys do break if you don't do your homework, if you buy the wrong one. But if you buy the right one like I did, the only thing that broke over the 8 months I owned it was a $190 top sensor. You know, and while the top breaks, and if I went to the dealership, they would have charged me like $800 just to look at it, yeah, I was able to fix it based on the strategies I teach for just $200. So again, not a big deal, you know, and that's also a big myth, you know. And so the last myth that I wanted to kind of break for you guys is that, you know, we talked a little bit about the fact that you don't have to be a millionaire to own the car. The repair is not that much, and the maintenance is not that bad if you know the right people. And then we also looked at the fact that these cars in general don't have high insurance premiums all the time unless you don't know where to look for insurance. The last thing I want to kind of leave you with is the whole idea that these cars depreciate, you lose your money on it, and not always. 9 out of 10 times, if you follow our strategies at exoticcarhacks.com and become an insider, we teach you how to make sure you pick the right cars that don't depreciate. Think about the concept in the simplest of ways. If you buy a LaFerrari, a $1.5 million car, when it first comes out, and you buy it, you order it, and you wait 2 years for it, you can sell it within a year or two. Right now they're doing $4 million minimum. So you just made $2.5 million in your car. That is the extreme, right? That's like the crazy. And then there's other cars you can buy for $300K, and within 2 years they're worth $180K. So you lost $120K, right? There is a lot of in between that. It doesn't have to be that extreme, and it doesn't have to be that bad. There's a lot of in between that, where if you buy that same car that's depreciated at 180, you buy it for 180K with just a few miles, like 2,000 miles. The guy barely drove it. The seat doesn't even stretch. Nothing's going on with the car. It's perfect. And yet, you're buying it for 50% of its cost. Then, you resell it, because at that point, it's already depreciated. So then at that point, it's just, you may lose a little, you may gain a lot. It all depends on how good you are and how well you follow our strategies. So they don't depreciate as much as normal cars, and they don't cost as much to insure, and they're just not that expensive to repair. So, you know, for all of these myths out there that exotic cars are unreachable, that's a myth too. Exotic cars are more reachable than they've ever been, especially when you live in the United States, especially when you understand the strategies we teach you at exoticcarhacks.com. So we'll catch you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks again for watching my video. I really hope you found value in it. Make sure to click the subscribe button somewhere around here. so that you can make sure you get notices when I release new clips. I'll try to cover all types of cool topics in the automotive industry, as well as incredible interviews with dealers sharing their secrets. So we'll catch you next time in another video.